Hello fellow humans and welcome to the best tier 9 tanks in World of Tanks Blitz in 2023. There will be 5 of them. We start off with the WT. You can also alternately use the WT of Panzer 4 or you can use the Ritter. It doesn't really matter, so let's go straight into it. Obviously this is my list. If your list is different to this one, then put it in the comments, would really appreciate that. And thing is, at tier 8, I did consider the ease of play a lot more, but now we're at tier 9. If you can't play Blitz, don't play tier 9. Which means now the tanks are going to be based on how much performance is possible to be extracted from them. And one of those is this one, the WT Knight. That's basically what it means, because Ritter is just Knight in German, but anyway. So, this tank is pretty damn good. However, it's also pretty damn hard to play. So is the WT Panzer 4. You can choose to use the 600 alpha damage gun. However, I wouldn't really do that, given that it got absolutely nerfed into the ground, with putting it to 600 alpha damage instead of 640, which it should be. Yeah, ideally, you'll want to play this thing passively. However, as I'm demonstrating right here, you don't have to. Because, here's the thing, guys. You don't have to be good at World Tanks Blitz. You just have to be less shit than everyone else. And that is, I don't think that hard to achieve. Now, obviously, it's going to take a lot of practice. No one's going to get great in 500 battles, which means if you're there, ideally stay in the lower tiers for a while, and only go to like tier 9, tier 10 when you have 800,000 battles at least, so that you have a bit of groundwork there, so you don't just go in blank, which obviously will be very helpful. Oh, it's a pretty fast game here. 2 minutes, the enemy team's already dead. And I've done a pretty reasonable amount of damage as well. And overall, obviously, this thing doesn't have any armor. It's a Panzer 4 chassis, which means it has tier 5 armor. And the superstructure on top of it, the gun guard, or whatever the hell you call that, put it in the comments if you know, also it doesn't have any armor. The mobility, well, is that of a mediocre tier 5 medium tank, which is fine enough, but you're not going to break any speed records with it. So, the important thing about this tank is the gun, and obviously, because the engine is at the front of this vehicle, yeah, it's very easy to get shot in the engine and have that destroyed, which is not very nice at all. However, overall, if you know how to play this tank, and if you've got what it takes, then this thing is definitely deserving a spot on this list. At number 4, I will put the 50 TP. Why is that? Because first of all, it's in a great line, and it is also a very good tank as well, given that it's equipped. This is not my account, so whatever. So, it's a good tank. It can do pretty much everything. It's in a good line, so it's really worth it. It's got great armor, it's got solid enough mobility, and a pretty damn good gun as well. And it is 8 degrees of gun depression. It's not as limited as like an IS-8, so that is great. So, disclaimer real quick, I did give this number 4 spot to the 50 TP. However, the E75 has just as much right to that spot as this vehicle. They're, well, very similar in what they can do. They're both very, very easy to play. So these are great tanks to start into tier 9 with, especially also because the tier 10s are great tier 10 start tanks, like the E100 or the 60 TP. They're not too fast, but they're very well armored. So I'm just going to wind forward here a little bit, because nothing happens in this battle. I'm going to pull back, and yeah, the team here in this game is absolutely horrible, but I just want to show realistic games, because, you know, first of all, I don't have 2 hours every single day to play Blitz and try to get an ace in this condition, and also because I want to show realistic games. So, again, the E75 and the 50 TP, you can put them both in the same spot, it'll be the same thing pretty much. Now, yes, this thing can use tungsten, isn't really that huge of an advantage as people make it out to be. It simply boosts the DPM just like adrenaline does. So, this is very easy to play, and I would definitely recommend either the 60 TP line or the E100 line as a sort of entry to the high tiers. So, this thing, obviously, it's not the fastest. Obviously, it's a heavy tank, so it's never going to have good mobility. And the gun, it's got high enough alpha damage. You got 460 as well, just like the Ritter as well. Whenever I'm saying German words, I just pronounce them in English because that's easier. But I am German. But anyway. So basically, it got good armor. It's got an excellent turret. It's got good gun depression. What else would you want more? The accuracy and all that is good enough. Now, the Kennedy one has moved forward finally. And yeah, but now it's a 2 versus 5, which is not really great. And here's the thing, and why I'm showing this game as well. The best tank will not carry you with the worst team. Or against the best team, however you want to put that. So it's move forward a little bit here and just skip this entire driving section because obviously absolutely nothing happens. And yeah, pretty much gonna move into the spawn now. It's still a 1v4. That's the accuracy with the aim time. Obviously it's a heavy tank, so it's not gonna be that great, but try to aim your shots. Make sure that those do hit properly. And overall, it's easy to play. And it is also good. And it's, you know, not like an IS-8 where, man, you barely consider it a tank in its current form. Even though you gotta give it to the IS-8 that does have a quite solid gun. Now, all I gotta do now is basically die. Tungsten can be useful in a situation like this, but, you know, it's a nice extra to have for this vehicle as well. And that is why it definitely deserves the number 4 spot, because it's easy and it can do pretty much everything. And number 3, the expert tank pick. Now, yes, this is going to be extremely hard to play. So basically, if I would focus on playability a lot more, then there would be something like a possibly Type 68, even though that's not that good, or even a E75 on here, or maybe even a K91. However, for this one, TNI isn't really a tier where you want to like learn the game and you already want to be good at it. So if you are good at the game, Standard B is an excellent vehicle. It's not like the Leopard PTA where it doesn't have gun depression. This thing does have an auto reloader, which means you can deal a lot of damage with your 350 alpha damage. You got solid 10 degrees of gun depression. You got good mobility. You obviously have 0 armor. However, again, if you're a good player, this thing just works. Well, the B at number 3. This thing is also quite hard to play, just like number 5. And to be honest, you also have to mention the Centurion 7-1 here, because obviously the Centurion 7-1 won't appear later in the list, but that is also a very good vehicle if you know what you're doing with that tank. So you might interchange the Standard B or the Centurion 7-1 for this number 3 spot, depending on your preference. However, I'm going to go for the Standard B auto reloader. Just has a bit more oomph in that regard. Now, what we have here again is we have, well, the heavy tanks are, well, going somewhere and not really being effective at all, which is obviously always bad, and the Standard B on the enemy team is somewhat suicidal as he just charges me down for whatever reason. That is something you should never ever do, like just rush one guy. You never know if there has 5 enemies around him or not. Now I'm gonna ass peek, which is not good, but against that kind of skill level you can ass peek and you will get away with it. But ideally you don't want to do that. But the faster you peek, especially for a vehicle like this, the faster you peek, the better you will be. So learn that. Learn to peek fast. It's harder on mobile. I know that. It's pretty hard on mobile. On PC, it's pretty easy, but the mobile, it's not really that fun. But again, you want to peek fast. You want to be able to move around the map and use the mobility on this vehicle. You also have 10 degrees of gun depression, which means you don't have to worry about where to go. And most tier 9s, except something like a M46 pattern, pretty much have tier 10 penetration, so that's never going to be a problem, ever. And overall, this thing is difficult to play. Obviously, it lacks armor, however, it does have the auto reloader, which on one side makes it easier because you can do a lot of damage at once. However, it also makes it harder because, for example, if you're firing while reloading, you lose that shell. So this is pretty tricky. And to be honest, I would rate the FE4202 over the Progetto 65, which kind of makes it a bit swung in that direction. However, 49, I think the Standard B is a good pick. It's a great tank and it works beautifully. At number 2, we have the Object 752, the better M5 Yaw. It does have a 2-shot autoloader, 2.5k DPM, 430 alpha damage per shot. The dispersion is horrible. However, you have 8 degrees of gun depression, solid enough mobility, and armor that is very good, especially around the turret and the upper plate. The lower plate obviously is a weak spot, as always. Now, what tank could possibly be better than this? Well, we'll see that. Now, in terms of ease of play and performance, this is the best one. If you're a newer-ish player, if an inexperienced player, then this is the better one. Number 1 is more of a connoisseur's pick, rather than, you know, this is the easiest to play, because this thing, it's quite easy to extract performance out of it. Now, 2-shot autoloaders are never really a great thing, because if you fire 1 shell, now you have to reload 2 shells for the price of 1, which is not really that amazing. So I'm not a huge fan of 2-shell autoloaders, especially with this object having 4-second intra-clip, which makes it that sometimes you can only fire one, you have to reload the other, and that is very, very annoying. It does make it a bit clumsy. However, in terms of mobility, this thing moves like almost like a medium tank in certain situations, which is quite impressive given the also very impressive armor profile on this vehicle. And yeah, shells like that are never gonna hit, but yeah, might as well try. And look at that battle. Don't go to that side of Rockfield. It is bad. Now when I say that, don't go to a certain side of a map. That doesn't mean that you lose 100% of battles on that side. That means that you lose 60% of battles on that side. And what does it mean when you lose 60% of battles? You have 40% win rate. So don't go there, ideally. And that is already, I've just driven straight through the entire enemy team, haven't taken a single point of damage yet. Well, obviously that's more of a symptom of the enemy team being utterly incompetent. However, what are they going to do? Nothing. You're just going to make sure that you're reloaded once you engage. Never engage without shells. And another thing that is very important about autoloaders, fake that you have shells, right? 90% of players will not count shells. Right? If they do count shells, you can't do that. However, if the enemy isn't counting your shells, if the enemy doesn't know that you just shot twice, they don't know whether you can shoot them for 700 damage or more. So always pretend, even if you're reloading, pretend that you have shells. Because if you run back, if you try to hide, they know that you're reloading. So that's a little trick that you want to use for autoloaders. Works for auto reloaders as well, obviously, like the standard B. However, it's a premium, so it's not number one, mainly. But it is excellent. And at number one, it's the Vickers CR. Why? This thing is basically a tier 10 at tier 9. And if you're good enough to play this vehicle, if you can extract all the performance out of this vehicle that it does have, then you can absolutely destroy everyone. And I'm using this, whenever I play raiding battles, I'm using this thing, because if I end up in a tier 8 match, I'm going to absolutely shit on everyone. However, if I play a tier 10 match, I barely even have a disadvantage. This thing is amazing. Now, do I get a massive erection every time I play this vehicle? Possibly. Besides the point. This thing, basically, whenever I'm forced to play raiding battles to earn giveaway tanks for you, I'm using this tank. Why? Because in a tier 8 match, you can absolutely dominate. Tier 10 match, you're not that worse than a Vickers Light. You're pretty much better than an AMX-30B, so you know, you're sort of on par with a lot of the worse tier 10 medium tanks, which means if you can hold your own, if you're the better player, you'll be perfectly fine and have an absolutely amazing time. So basically, you have a tier 10 gun with about 200 less DPM on this tank, which is great. Now, you have absolutely no armor, well, on the hull. However, they nerfed it about 3 times already, but the turret still does have armor on the gun mantle, which is insane for a tank of this type of caliber. Now, the mobility isn't the amazingest, right? It moves like a fast medium rather than a light tank. I mean, that's what it is, really. So, might want to watch out for that. It doesn't just dart up to 65 kilometers an hour and stay there. It's not an IU-201, obviously. However, the gun on this tank, well, tier 8 can't do anything. They're absolutely, utterly hopeless. You also have good HE rounds as well, just to note that. Which is another great extra feature that it doesn't need, yet has anyway. Because, what more do you want to do? Now, obviously, it is extremely difficult to play, right? You can't just get into this tank, play it, and you'll be a super unicum. That's not how this works. This is a tank that you have to know how to play the game. You have to have experience, you have to have map knowledge, you have to know how to position yourself. Now, essentially, what you want to know to play a vehicle like this is you want to know every corner of every map and where are the enemies, where can they go. Like, for example, here, there are 4 enemies. Only 3 on my team. That T4 over there, he's full HP, and that is a pretty damn big problem. Now, I can also see that WZ is alone. Always want to have 1v1s. You never want to fight multiple tanks at the same time. That is about the dumbest thing you can do ever, to fight multiple tanks at the same time. Always want to have 1v1s and then win that one. Ideally a favorable 1v1 like this one. But the problem is, obviously, I don't have a team in this. But I've heard some people say that yes, but this tank is extremely team dependent. You can't do anything when you don't have a team. That is as far from the truth as it can be, because a vehicle like this, you're fast, you can run away, you can position yourself wherever you want. So if your team is crumbling around you, you can still go to advantageous positions and absolutely farm like I'm doing right here. That is 4,000 damage, 4,500 damage, easily. So, if you are good enough, if you are up to the challenge that this vehicle does pose, then the Vickers CR is the best tier 9 tank in World of Tanks Blitz.